All right, well, I've got 10 o'clock, so why don't we begin? Welcome, and again, thanks for all your work and your time joining these. Let's go through introductions. Dillian, do you mind calling roll?
Andrew,
I'm here.
Charles Calvano, he had a conflict. Sue Kaufman. Sue sent an email. She said she'll be driving, and most of the time she'll be in listening mode. So, Mark, the alternative, Mark.
Present.
Okay, so you have all the power to vote today. Sean. Sean Kallstrom, I think I saw him.
Yeah, I thought I saw his name on here.
Damon. I think I saw him too.
Yeah, I saw Damon, and I see his name on here still.
He's there. He's muted.
All right, maybe he wandered off.
I can
Maybe
see
you
him.
thought we were starting a little later.
Yeah.
Corey Thomas.
Yes.
Okay. Todd
Here.
is here. Rob Graper. Chris Seaman.
I'm here.
Okay. Al Spalding.
Here.
Mike Bart.
Here.
And Will Rodriguez. Did I miss somebody? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have a quorum.
All right, perfect. If any member who is on, who's not said they're on, wants to introduce themselves while we introduce any member of the public, please feel free to do that. But yeah, any members from the public who wish to be recognized, please introduce yourself now.
Good morning, everyone. Terry Beals, representing Sound Transit, just listening in as an interested party.
Thank you, Terry. All righty. So let's review and approve the agenda. Nice and short, 5 items. Can we get a motion?
This is Chris. I move to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Chris.
This is Corey. I'll second.
Thank you, Corey. Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? And the motion passes. So next is review and approve the agenda for March 3rd. Or I'm sorry, the minutes for March 3rd. So Krista, do you mind pulling those up there? Or maybe you are and there's a lag.
Actually, I'm trying and it keeps telling me they're not there. So let me go someplace else. Hang on just a second.
Okay.
The link on the agenda worked.
Oh, it did for you. Okay.
The one that was on the website, yeah.
Zoom is great for meetings, but not for loading documents.
All right, pretty short there. Again, just overview the 5 items that were on the agenda and who was in attendance. So if there are any corrections that you notice, please speak up. And if not, if we can get a motion.
Hey, Stoyan, I'm here. The power in my building just went out and we're good to go again. So sorry about that.
Okay, we saw you there, but you didn't say anything. So I marked you as present.
This is Chris. I'll move to approve the March 3rd minutes.
Thank you, Chris.
Sal, I'll second.
Thank you, Al. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And the motion passes. So now on to the review of significant changes. So we've got chapters 1, 9, 11, 12, and 31, correct, Stoyan and?
Yes, and the TAG didn't vote on these chapters, didn't provide any comments or recommendations. We had 1 week for a review by the TAG members. So if we can, if the TAG members can vote on these chapters that were already covered last week, we can save some time for the last meeting next week.
Can you say that once more? I'm sorry, Stoyan. That
Well,
didn't-
usually, so we discussed the chapters last week, but the TAG members didn't provide any comments. We didn't have any vote on it.
Okay,
So
I see.
the 1 week was for additional review by the TAG members, and if we can have a vote this week for these chapters before we start addressing the rest of it.
Yeah, certainly. So, okay, so for chapter 1, we'll start?
Yes,
Or,
chapter 1.
okay. And let's see, amended costs. So amend needs, okay, so the TAG recommendation is no amendments are needed? Is that? What
The recommendations are yes or no for the cost and amendment needed. The recommendations are for the TAG member that did the analysis, but the TAG as a whole didn't vote on it. It's similar.
Okay.
It's similar to well, it's not similar. It's the same what we did with the existing amendments.
Yep.
With the
So then for chapter 1, for example, the TAG comments, recommendations, that's we're going through each line item, not voting on the entire chapter right now. Is that?
well, you can vote on the entire chapter, and if there is something complicated or with questions, then we can go line by line. There, I didn't hear any comment in opposition the last week, but
Okay.
just this additional week was for the TAG members to review the significant changes. So,
Can I float as an idea for what we could do? I think I understand what Stoyan's asking for.
Sure. Yeah. Please, Chris.
So I think we would float a motion to, as a TAG, put forward the analysis done by Sue as the TAG's recommendation for the cost impacts of changes to the 2021 code. Is that what you're looking for, Stoyan?
yeah, should be agree with recommendations, or if you folks disagree, then it should be something added to this cell for discussion purposes.
Okay.
This is
sounds good.
what we did with the existing amendment. So with the existing amendment, we had agree with recommendations, or we had TAG comments on the right in the right column. So this one is similar.
Okay. Okay. I think I'm caught off. Sorry, I didn't sleep well last night, so I apologize if.
Well, me either, so I didn't explain well.
All right, I'll accept only 50% then. Thank you, Stoyan. So, all right, I think what's best to do, we'll take each chapter by itself since we went over everything. If over the past week anyone saw anything that they would like to discuss in further detail, we can discuss that prior to voting. Otherwise, we'll vote on the entire chapter that we review if there's nothing in the last column, we agree with reviewer comments. Otherwise, anything we put in the last column amends what's also in the reviewer comments. So for chapter 1 there, does anybody have anything they want to discuss prior to voting?
I think we should just fill out the question mark with a yes or no.
Okay.
And then
Oh,
on,
yes, good
yeah.
point.
And then on the second one, I don't know that the type 4 connection protection, I don't know that that's new. I think it's new in the 2021 code, but I think that's something we brought forward as a state amendment. So I think when we talk about new versus existing, it's new to the base model code, but I think that that section existed in some fashion in the off-cycle rulemaking that we did, and then in the 2018 Washington State Building Code. Does that sound right?
Um,
Or was that not part of our mass timber amendments that we made?
Isn't it addressing just the inspection requirement?
Yeah, that you have to look at the connection before you cover it up with the fire resistive stuff. I think that's what that is.
that makes sense to me. Yeah, for the wood cover. Yeah, and it is for type 4. Question is though, was that added? Is that no longer necessary now because it's been added to the model code though?
You know,
And
this
it-
is Todd. I don't know if I see it. It's a good question. So Chris, it was you, Chris, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember that? I don't remember that, but it's not a
don't.
specialty of mine.
But unless it's a special inspection, it's not going to increase the cost of construction, I don't think. Because, I mean, we're looking at the cost of construction as felt by the developer, right? So if it's something else we need to look at, I don't know that that increases the cost for the developer, unless by us looking at it, we need more time and we need more people. But
Do we know what amount of cost is added because of this? Are there details on that?
It sounds like that's what we're discussing now, that would question if there even is a cost associated with it.
Well, as far as I remember, in the significant changes, the comment was that it doesn't create something new. It just clarifies that the inspection is supposed to be done and clarifies the language. This is the case with most of these inspections. If you remember, a few years ago, there was a tragic accident in California, in Berkeley. It started with a local proposal, went through California, and then went to ICC. So it's not that the inspection wasn't required, it just wasn't done correctly, and they clarified the language. And after that, it was in 2016, after that, the language was modified a few times. So most of these inspections, they don't create something new, they just clarify something that wasn't clear.
okay, so then I think I would say, I would recommend that we as a group say that there's not a cost impact on those 2 items.
Mike, I would agree with that.
And then that will probably be the same, right there as well. All right, any additional discussion?
Yeah, this is Mark. I think the intent was that, or I wasn't clear that the cost would be only solely to the builder. I know any additional inspections to a jurisdiction it takes more man hours. So is that the intent, is to move this forward with additional costs only to the cost of the building?
No, I'd agree with you, Mark. However, question is it a brand new inspection? And I think what we're saying is it's a clarification of language mainly. And then in the second one, it would just be an additional line item to check as opposed to an additional inspection itself. Therefore, the marginal cost of looking at one more thing is negligible. Is that what other folks think, or what's?
This is Mike. It's all stuff that we've been inspecting anyway. It just clarifies that it is, specifically needs to be looked at. But if it was a new, having to go out a separate time yet again, there may be some impact on jurisdictions, but in general, from the building department side, this is stuff that has been looked at anyway, so it doesn't really change a whole lot from my perspective.
This is Mark. Okay, I'll agree with that. So I don't think it's that big an impact either way, to tell you the truth. So.
Okay. But Mark, yeah, to answer your question, we are looking at jurisdictional cost too. So that would, factor in, it's not just developer cost. So, okay, any additional comments or discussion on chapter 1?
I guess I'm a little confused on, so there is going to be an added cost, but we're saying there isn't an added cost.
So we're saying that the amendment itself doesn't change anything material. It's just a revision of language to make things more clear. So maybe reviewer comment is, maybe we should revise the reviewer comment to say, instead of added to, language has been modified, to make clear this inspection.
This is a new, when you're looking at 2021 IBC, it's shown as a new type of inspection, but the type 4, the requirements, the language for type 4 throughout the code was completely modified. And now we have 4A, 4B, 4C. So again, this inspection was already covered by the local building departments. It just adds additional language in the code.
Okay, so clarifies and clarifying language for the inspection.
Specific language for types 4A, 4B, and 4C connection inspections.
Okay. Damon, is that better? More understandable now for?
Yeah, I think I'm tracking. Thank you for clarifying.
This is Mike. I think for the chart, it's best if in the cost column we just show the N, and then in the tag recommendation essentially accepted. We don't necessarily have to draw a specific attention to the cost impact, because there's always going to be debate there, and there is probably minimal in some cases, but I think the attention should just be on that, the tag recommends accepting that without any change.
Yeah, I agree. I think the original idea, Krista, correct me if I'm wrong, is we weren't going to change what the original reviewer said, but since we're going back anyway and changing it, yeah, we may as well just make those changes. Good point, Michael. All right, any other discussion? Anyone want to make a motion?
Yeah, this is Mark. I'll make a motion that we accept the reviewer comments,
Thanks, Mark.
chapter 1.
A second.
Thank you, Mike. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? And the motion passes. All right, so on to chapter 12. Any discussion on costs, amendment needed, or our recommendations from last meeting? And if not, if anyone would like to make a
Yes.
motion.
I've got a quick question.
Yep.
So restroom privacy, that's only public restrooms, right? That's not in like a residential building or anything, right?
Correct. Which number are you looking at?
1209.3, 1210.3.
Yeah, that would be that actually yeah, that would just be public restrooms, yes. But yeah, that was an interesting discussion on the model code floor. Yeah, it you know, I think the language, correct me if I'm wrong, it's that gender, let's see, tag keep state amendment for gender neutral. Okay, never mind. I was thinking of some model code language that came in, which, do we still need that? I think the 2021 IBC has been updated, both for gender neutral restrooms as well as, you know, screening requirements. But
Yeah, I just thought I'd ask. I don't know. It's kind of a funny, interesting little amendment.
This is Mark. I had thought that we'd already discussed all these sections last meeting.
yeah, we did. That memory just came back to me though. All right, so yeah, you're right, Mark. We did discuss things. Any other comments or discussion prior to making a motion? Mark, would you like to do the honors, make the motion?
Sure. I'll recommend that we take the reviewer's comments for chapter 12.
All right, thank you. Any seconds?
It's Chris, I'll second.
Thanks, Chris. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And motion passes. All right, so last chapter here to vote on, chapter 31. Take a look, see if you've got any comments from what we decided last meeting. And if not, if anyone wants to make a motion, Mark, since you're Sue's stand-in, if you want to do the honors, that's.
I'll do the honor and make a recommendation. We accept the recommendations for chapter 31 moving forward.
Perfect. Thanks, Mark. Do you have a second?
It's Chris, I'll second.
Thanks, Chris. Any discussion? And all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And motion passes.
So the next one is chapter 9. Oh, okay, we can do 11.
Okay.
I've got
Mr.
9
Nine.
up, Council.
Okay, okay. Let's go back to 9 then. And I remember there was a long discussion about the wine versus spirits. And I tried to go further and research it, but couldn't find any detailed explanation why the wine was added in the same group with the spirits.
All right. Corey, were you about to say something? I saw your name pop up.
Yeah, I didn't have anything to add, just that, I suppose if, I can look into this more, and my recommendation is that to let the council know that certainly this will add costs, and that maybe that someone could sponsor a change on this if we think it's needed, when we come around to new proposals. So I don't know. I think it's not written very well as far as a code enforcement person. I could see where could be misconstrued as far as what is bulk storage and what is not, because there's no square footages. It just says bulk storage. So, bulk storage to one person is not the same as what it is to someone else. So, certainly there's going to be a cost. There's no doubt about that. So, an amendment needed? I think so. So that's my opinion, for sure.
Well, thanks, Corey.
Change book.
Any other comments? I'm not sure
And I have the significant changes book. It doesn't really elaborate on why wine was added to this at all. So
Yeah, the significant changes, the comment sounds like the reason was clarification, but it doesn't seem as a clarification. Wine versus spirits.
yeah, like the only thing that I could say before is if, certainly wine is very often, as far as bulk storage goes, is very often, stored in wooden barrels in racks and things like that. So I don't know if there's been a loss history of, wine barrel storage warehouses or something. Again, there's no explanation for it in the significant changes book. Certainly once you repackage it from the wooden wine barrels into what is normally glass bottles, and put it in cardboard boxes, it's much less of a fire hazard. So
All right, so maybe we'll take a look at it and hold off on this till next week.
I don't know that that's necessary. I mean, I think we all agree with what Corey's saying about it being a cost and being something we want to entertain an amendment to. I don't think anybody here thinks necessarily differently.
yeah.
Well, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Corey, is
Mhm.
if we amend it, that would, oh, never mind. Okay. Yes. Okay. So then we accept it and we can write a state amendment to consider.
Yes, I think,
Okay.
either as a group or me, or, I would certainly be willing to put a draft together for the group discussion when we, and submit an amendment for sure. And, as a group, we could refine it.
Okay. Perfect. Yep, we should probably pull in maybe some of the wineries.
Right,
well
yeah,
if
I
we've
mean,
got folks
this is
that
gonna,
wanna
you
be
know,
involved.
there's a, there's a lot of wineries in the state, and that's, you know, that's gonna be an issue for them too. You know, a lot of these bulk wine warehouses and things are in very rural areas and don't necessarily have access to a public water supply for sprinklers or things like that either, so,
Good point.
yeah.
Would that also tie into 903.2.4.2 with the distilled spirits? I mean, because do they need sprinklers in
Well, I think the spirits
manufacturing?
are far more of a hazard than the wine. I mean, basically, the spirits are a flammable liquid, so it's basically a flammable liquid warehouse, you know, if they're doing
Yeah.
bulk storage of spirits.
Yeah, Corey, I would say though that I think that's another one we want to flag for discussion because there
Mhm.
are varying levels of distillers. I have one locally. My only distiller is so itty bitty that, you know, they have a still that does like 5 gallons at a
Yeah,
time.
no, I have
So-
some very small ones just like that too. Yeah, in Renton, and yeah, they're in some of the older buildings that are that, you know, and they take up, you know, maybe 1,000 or 2,000 square feet. They're very small. So,
Hey, Corey, it's Ken in Seattle. Did you bring up the point I stepped out? I'm sorry about that. The new chapter 40 in the fire code that's all about storage of distilled spirits and wines. It's
Nope.
brand new for 2021.
No, I didn't even notice that.
Okay. So, yeah, because it references back to chapter 9. It just has a pointer, basically goes back to say, hey, you have to go to chapter 9 for it. But there is a whole new chapter 40 for it. So I don't know if this should be one of those crossover with the fire code tags.
Yeah, this one came in with the same code change proposal as added the new chapter 40 stuff.
Yeah, and I don't have the significant changes book to the fire code yet because I guess they haven't printed it yet. So
Yeah, I think for what we're doing today though, it doesn't, you know, doesn't change what we need to do, which is,
yeah,
you know,
like,
raise a flag and say, hey, this is something you care about, building code council.
yeah, because it's the same way. The 903.242 is the same way. There's no, you know, minimum size or anything or number of still. You know, there's no lower end on it. You know, it just says if you have one small still and you're making it, you know, then you have to sprinkler the group, you know, F1 fire area, and doesn't matter. There's no, you know, be nice if maybe they had a baseline or something.
I'm also kind of wondering if, like we have distilled spirit manufacturing, but also what about like marijuana storage or cannabis storage and cannabis production? Because that's like hot lights. And I mean, I know Washington's pretty progressive. So, I mean, isn't there a chance of like, could we lump this into just like any sort of, I don't know.
That's a different hazard, and it's addressed by marijuana and, you know, other chapters. So.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
For now, I think we can just, you know, send the recommendation to the council with that we would amend both of those sections.
Yep. I agree with that.
The 907-210, I think that's a small impact. I don't think that will actually affect that many buildings. So the other one was for the
Can you scroll back up to 907-210 real quick?
907-210. That's for the self-storage or mini storage buildings that are 3 stories or higher. They require a manual fire alarm system if they're not sprinklered. So I would say the majority of those will be sprinklered. So I doubt if this is going to actually even come into effect for most places.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Siemens added that in. I remember it was
Oh,
so yeah, those are all going to be sprinklered anyway, new buildings.
I think so for the majority of them. Uh, 911-1, yeah, they require a fire command center for group F1, S1 or 500,000 square feet. So on a building that size, the cost for a fire command center for buildings that are over 500,000 square feet is probably going to be small. Again, how many of these get built in the state of Washington every year? Probably not a lot.
Yeah, that's probably just Boeing.
Yeah, I mean, that's
I've got several going right now, but yeah, not a huge impact to them, I wouldn't imagine.
yeah, it's
Which type of buildings are F1 and S1? I can't recall. I'm sorry.
So F is factory, so the 1 is moderate hazard factory. So basically, most things manufactured would be F1 unless it's like glass or something. S1 is storage, again, of moderate hazard. So that's most warehouses.
mhm.
Okay, thank you.
The other items were on that at the beginning of the chapter, the other sprinklers or let's see here. Well, the 903-312, the limits on the 13R systems. Certainly a cost there. I think it's justified. I don't think we want to make a recommendation to change that. So personally, but
I'm probably in a different spot on that, Corey. I want to
Uh-huh.
refine it. I agree with the don't stick a 13R on top of a podium, but I don't like the 30-foot floor level limitation personally.
Yeah, you can make them maybe tweak that
Yeah.
so it's 3 stories instead of the 30-foot or something.
Yeah.
But is that something you'd want to do is that something we want to do as a tag or I don't know. Yeah, I guess we can. So.
Yeah, I think we could put an amendment in, dealing with from fire access level, as opposed to the number of floors above the podium slab.
Okay, no problem.
This is Ken in Seattle again. There was a WABO technical code meeting the other day, and WABO voted to provide a code change to this. So there will be coming one from WABO.
Oh, okay.
So
we
you
don't
might,
have to do
yeah,
that.
and Chris, I brought that up that I knew that you had been also looking at this, I thought, but yeah, WABO is going to be proposing something. So I don't think you guys have to do the work on this. Just let WABO do it. See what they present.
No, we'll see what they present. Hopefully it's not something that they're totally opposed to this, but
yeah, it came back to wanting to go back to the regular language, and because the justification that was sent in on the code change was, oh well, the height amount is going to be, we just want to make it the same as when standpipes are required. That's what the national code change mentioned. That's where they came up with the 30 feet. And then for the 2024 code, they thought, oh, well, we'll just modify it to 35 feet. So there hasn't been any justification to go outside the scope of 13R. And that was the argument, is the scope of 13R allows this. So they were trying to figure out why it got changed. So they'll
I
have
can
some
tell you why. It was the concrete folks who, was an attack on wood construction, like frame wood. This was part of it all. Due to fires, of course, but there were other ways to mitigate fire risk rather than this.
I have no further comment, and as the reviewer of this section, I will put forth a motion to forward this to the council with the written revisions as we have discussed that as a group today.
I just ask a question real quick before we move forward. So the change from 60 feet to 30 feet, that was because the concrete folks, I'm sorry, can you just repeat that?
You can give me a call later after this meeting if you want, but the ready mix concrete folks put together a coalition to attack light frame wood construction. There have been a lot of fires during construction. This is my opinion. I'm not speaking for the Building Code Council. There have been quite a few fires, especially during construction of light frame wood, especially over top of podiums. So, they've been using that to try to limit the use of wood. So, yeah, I'll explain more about that in private, about the politics of it all. But
all right, great. Thank you, Andrew. I can do that.
I'll second the motion.
thank you, Mark. Any discussion? And all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? And motion passes.
We discussed chapter 11A, but it just, I will add another comment. For chapter 11, the biggest issue is not chapter 11, really, it's the new 2017 ANSI. So this is the most significant cost impact. There are a few sections here and there, but again, ANSI is the most significant, moving from 2009 to 2017.
Could I ask a question? This is Mark. Who would be responsible then for suggesting we adopt the 2017? Is that what we're trying to say? I mean, we're pointing out these differences. So who's next to say those costs could be absorbed and adopted with the 2017?
I'm not going to directly answer this question, but keep in mind that 2017 ANSI and Chapter 11 in 2021 International Building Code, they are linked. So Chapter 11 is the scoping, and it refers to 2017 ANSI for the technical requirements. So the decision should be at the council, but if the council decides not to adopt 2017 and keep it to 2009 ANSI, then there are a big need for modification of Chapter 11. It's just an additional comment to your question.
And this is Al. I might add to that, Mark, that that's exactly what happened when we adopted the 2018. We didn't go with the newer ANSI because of the associated costs, but you do get to a point where, and somebody could certainly submit a proposal to not adopt the 2017 based on the costs. But the other thing to consider too is that if we continue to sort of kick the can down the road and not these costs associated with this newer version of ANSI aren't going to go away. They're not going to. They're probably only going to continue to slowly evolve, right? And so at some point there does need to be a consideration for moving the state forward and getting in line with the national model codes as it relates to ANSI, as Stoyan was saying. So they did punt on this before, Mark. That's why we were under the 18 adopted codes. We were still using the 2009.
It was different under 2018 IBC because when ICC adopted the final adoption of 2018, 2017 ANSI wasn't completed yet. So in 2018, the reference standard is 2009 ANSI. So I wasn't here at that time, but I guess the council had could have adopted 2017, but they didn't. So it's a little different now. For 2001 IBC, the reference standard is 2017 ANSI.
You're right. Your recollection is correct. But that was the conversation. I was on the building code tag for the 18 series, and there was considerable conversation about the costs associated with the newer requirements. And somebody still has the ability, Mark, to throughout this process to say, hey, this is the benefits don't outweigh the costs, really, and make a proposal not to adopt that.
So this is Mark again. Is it possible we could recommend that somebody explore adopting the 17, or a conversation be struck on that, or is this the right venue to do that?
The recommendation from the TAG will be a recommendation. It needs to go through the standing committee and then to the council.
Well, then I would propose that we recommend that someone explore the possibilities of adopting the 17, because I agree we can't keep kicking it down the road. It's either going to be good or not, or it needs modified. So to take those costs down.
I think, Mark, we're looking at it the wrong way. If we do nothing, we adopt the 2017. So if we do nothing, we just go forward with the model code, which is to adopt the more current ANSI standard. We have to actually do something to keep the 2009, which means somebody has to submit a proposal to do that as well.
Thank you for that clarification. I had that backwards then. So
okay, yep.
We will be moving forward with the 2017 the way it's written here now, correct?
This is given, yes. It's a reference document. It's adopted by reference, and if we do nothing, then it will be automatically adopted as part of 2021 IBC.
Okay, thanks. I had that backwards.
(2017) ANSI is more restrictive than 2010 ADA standards. Many people and entities are saying that the Department of Justice will and the U.S. Access Board will modify the 2010 ADA standards and will adopt technical provisions from ANSI 2017. But at this time, I haven't seen any movement. Again, it's an additional comment.
Andrew, are you looking for a motion to propose
Yeah,
this forward?
I think we're ready for a motion. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, I move that the TAG put forward the recommendations as shown on the screen for Chapter 11.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Any discussion? Any more discussion, I should say? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I,
Aye.
All those opposed? And the motion passes.
So now we can go to the new chapters. And my question for Andrew and the TAG members is, should we include the TAG comments and recommendations at the initial discussion, or we'll do the same, keep it open until the last meeting next week?
I'll let other folks speak up.
I think it's fine to leave it open. Give us more time to review.
Okay, open. Anyone want to close them today? Otherwise, we'll leave them open. Okay, well, there we go. Okay, we'll start with chapter 8. Chapter 8, there is only one section, 806.9, and this is a new section, and my opinion is that it doesn't have any additional cost or need any amendment. And in chapter 26, there are more sections that were amended, and I have only one, 2607.5, which is related to automatic sprinkler system for light transmitting plastic wall panels. And I couldn't justify if there is a cost or not. The current language provides requirements for buildings equipped throughout with automatic sprinkler system in accordance with, it refers to section 903.311. And this is pertaining to the maximum percentage area increase of exterior wall in any story in light transmitting plastic wall panels. It's too much wording, but and the maximum square footage of a single area given in table 2607.4. And the additional specification is that such installations are exempt from height limitations, and the modified section limits these installations to 75 feet above grade plane. So it was a little bit above my knowledge to justify if it has additional cost or not. So the last, when you see in the this review comment, the last sentence, so the modified section limits these installations to 75 feet above grade plan, and previously it didn't have any height limitations. So if there are folks with more experience on this, but I couldn't, again, I couldn't justify the cost. So I kept it uncertain.
Stoyan, I think this is one of those things that is in the code that we never ever see. I don't think anybody uses those kinds of panels in any building of substance. So I think there
haven't
probably
seen
is
it.
a limitation.
I haven't seen it, and I didn't know anything about it.
And we had it in some
Yeah.
Boeing buildings down on the manufacturing plant.
But they wouldn't be that tall potentially, or are they?
What's that?
I guess they could be. Are they 75 feet?
The building's 150 feet tall and it's wide open.
Yeah. And then they've got the light panels on
Mhm.
the roof for
Yep.
some daylighting is the idea.
Yeah. Hi, Terry.
So I guess
You
there
still
would be costs
listening?
for sure then.
Terry Beals used to work there. Yeah, we had them sprinkler on the face of them.
Boy,
Yeah.
did we have some issues there, didn't we, Corey?
Yeah, see, Mr. Beals is trying to forget his Boeing days, but yeah, we had this exact situation. Yeah.
Well, if I were to just comment, no, those days just seem like they happened yesterday, Corey.
Right? But we basically did the same thing. I mean, buildings of this size are gonna be sprinklered anyway, so, I don't think it's, it's gonna really be a cost issue because they're sprinklered anyway, so.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think in this case, though, that building we're just talking about, it would not be allowed to be used because the
Oh.
height limitation is going to be 75 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So they would have to go with something not plastic for getting light in, like a safety glazing or something.
75 feet above grade plane. Yeah, I see that. Huh.
So I think there would be a cost if maybe in the comments we could just include what Corey was saying about who it would impact. I can't think of, I was thinking like high-rise buildings, right?
Yeah,
With-
this is in
but
a F building, yeah, factory.
yeah.
It's a mixed F and B, yeah.
Is that enough, Stoyan, between us to put something there about who it would impact and how? Because there would be a cost.
Yeah, I
for
kind of agree,
mowing.
Chris, of putting something in there to find out what the cost is.
Well, the easiest part for me is to put yes on cost. But if during the last meeting next week, or I can work on some kind of a comment, but again, I'm afraid it's a little bit above my area of expertise, so I don't want to screw it up.
Yeah.
So I'm sure we'll get back to it next week. So I'll change the cost to yes, and we can spend a little bit more time next week. I will research it, further research it based on the comment I heard. If this is what you're asking for.
I don't know how much research you need, Stoyan. I think it's just pointing out that there are probably costs, but it's probably to a limited group of people.
Yeah, I mean,
Large-
this is a very unusual situation for
Yeah.
sure, and
I think we just highlight it, right, Corey? I mean, just
I
say,
think
yeah, there's
so.
probably
It's just,
costs.
it's not going to come up very often, and especially at those heights,
And in general, this type of reports, they're just heads up for folks that don't get deeply involved in the code development.
Mhm.
We'll post the final versions on the website, and we will be collecting comments. So not too much details are needed. It's just a little bit of a clarification if it has cost impact.
The original monograph on the ICC code change proposal should at least give some background on cost impacts that they would have considered at the time.
I didn't go that far, but I can spend some more time. Okay, so this is the only one in chapter 26 that again I was assuming there may be a cost impact, but I wasn't sure. Everything else, I don't think there will be any section that deserves to be flagged. And if you don't have anything for 1826, we can go to chapter 10.
Okay. I did not find anything too shocking. I put some placeholders for things that I thought we could talk about as far as cost impacts. There's a new requirement for 10-foot candles within exit stairways and exit access stairways, but instead of the 1-foot candle, but I don't see how physically you could install lighting to give yourself 1-foot candle and not 10 in stairs. So technically I think there could be a cost, but I don't think it's worth the paper to tell anybody about it. The other change that I think is significant is the area of refuge size changes to match up with the ANSI standard. You get an extra 4 inches. So there's a cost there because every inch of leasable space is something developers will care about. So I think that one I'd actually probably put a yes on, but it's really tied into the ANSI standards.
Keep in mind, I'm sorry,
then-
Chris, for the interruption,
Yeah, go
but
ahead.
this is again related to ANSI and the bigger clear floor spaces and accessible routes. So this is one of those that is linked to the ANSI standard. Because the clear floor
absolutely.
space got changed from 30 by 48 to 30 by 52, this is why 100963 was modified too.
Yep. And then the only other change I saw as even marginally possible for cost impact, so the two-way communication systems that would be at the area of refuge, but are always at the elevator because you don't have areas of refuge. Those have to dial out to an approved supervising station. It wasn't specifically called out that way before, but I think that's how everybody enforces it. So I don't think there's actually a cost unless somebody thinks otherwise. I would put
No,
no
I mean,
there.
those were, yeah, they're pretty much, that's where they were going anyway, so.
Yeah, that's what I figured, but it was new language, so I thought I'd try to
It's
find something that costs
really
money.
just a
but-
clarification in the code as is what I see it.
Cool. And then the rest of everything in the chapter was all clarifying kind of stuff.
So this is Mark. Could I speak briefly about the 10-foot candles, 1008.2.1? A former electrical contractor, there will be a cost, and the technology that they have now with the LEDs, they really don't throw as much light as the old incandescent ones do. So you may have to use additional fixtures to get the foot candles at the floor. So I would say there's definitely some sort of cost associated with that, maybe with the number of fixtures you use, or maybe even just the type that industry has that they would have to modify to meet that, because they may have to produce an exit emergency light that has more watts to it. And that may or may not be available at this time.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. I believe it. So then that's probably what I would say. I don't know if we have access to the whole ICC list of stuff, and maybe they have addressed cost impacts on this item for us that we can pass on.
Yeah, I agree with Mark to have that cost noted in there just for transparency's sake.
Cool, that's all I had, unless somebody else sees something else there they'd want to talk about more about.
Great, thank you, Chris. Any other comments, discussion?
Yeah, I have a question on 1030. What would better flow be defined as?
Just reads better.
Airflow?
No, it just reads better. Just our flow of going through the code. Just a reorg of sections. All the same stuff is there though.
Okay, thank you.
I guess in the context of all bunch of building people, maybe flow is a bad word. I would say reorganize, maybe using better code language.
It's like modified for readability. Yeah, something like that. Whatever works.
Yep. Thanks, Krista.
All right.
Okay. We have also chapter 2.
Yes, that's me. I did definitions. Okay, so bear with me if I made any mistakes. Our first, I didn't change my name there, or I also need to update the title to say 2021 instead of 2018. The top there. But the first definition we had was atrium. It was just modified to address two conditions: vertical space enclosed at the top. Atrium typically, in number 2, atrium typically connects 3 or more stories. I don't think there was a cost associated with that or an amendment needed. Our second definition, change of occupancy, is modified. The scope of a change of occupancy has been narrowed where no classification change takes place. So there's just a kind of narrowing of the definition there. Impact protective system, addition, basically just assemblies designed to withstand airborne debris. Seemed just a new addition there. There's an addition to mass timber. I was kind of confused about this mass timber portion. It's now defined as representative of both the large wood building elements historically recognized as heavy timber construction and the 3 new construction types, IBA, IBB, and IBC. I don't think there's any cost associated with that, but it is just, I think that's just a new definition. So nailable substrate, that's a new definition, I believe. Oh, is defined to clarify what materials should be expected to provide withdrawal resistance for roof or wall cladding assemblies. The definition of penthouse was clarified just to ensure that just kind of enclosures extended to the roof in order to house stairways. I think it already included mechanical and building operational things at the top of the building, and now it includes stairways. Perimeter fire containment system was added. It's a new definition. Permanent individual truss member diagonal bracing is a new definition. Permanent individual truss member restraint was a new definition. Porcelain tile is a new definition. There was a modification to positive roof drainage. The scope is broadened to include all design loads and sufficient additional slope. Preservative treated wood was an addition with a new definition. Puzzle room was an addition, a new definition. Secondary structural members, it was modified to include bearing wall. Modification to shear wall, the definition only applies to chapter 23. Special amusement area was modified, simplifies the definition into 3 parts. Special event structure was a new definition that was added. Spray applied foam plastic was a new definition that was added. Storage racks, steel, cantilevered. This is a new definition, but it kind of was from there was like an original storage racks definition that included steel cantilevered, so this kind of simplified it into its own definition. Terminated stops was a new definition added. Underpinning was a new definition added, as well as vapor diffusion port, which is a new definition added. And the last one was windborne debris regions. It changed the mean changed the definition of water highline to mean water highline, where an exposure decondition exists upwind if the water line changed. So that's all I have for definitions.
All righty, thank you. Any discussion or comments?
This is Terry at Sound Transit. I don't know if I'm even allowed to speak right now. I may be out of order. Stoyan, you can let me know if I am.
Nope, go ahead.
Okay. Sound Transit, and I'm kind of like leading an effort to actually put together a few code change proposals when that opportunity opens itself up. But here on chapter 2, one of the things that I've been thinking about is in terms of like a fixed guideway transit and passenger rail system, NFPA 130, which is a lot of, that's kind of like what we follow in terms of the standard in building our light rail guideway and our transit system. So for chapter 2, one of the things that we've been thinking, and maybe this is something that we could put on a future agenda if that would be appropriate, but in chapter 2, whether or not the IBC, your tag here would take up the conversation or discussion on adding a new definition for a light rail transit system, such as a high capacity transportation system or something similar to that that was established by RCW 81104. So, definitely want to, follow the parliamentary procedure and the protocol, but at some point would like to get some feedback or discussion with this particular tag on that potential definition add in chapter 2 and potentially, other certain sections of the IBC 2018 in terms of like NFPA 130. Any thoughts about that?
This is Chris. I mean, generally speaking, I wouldn't want to add a definition unless you're running into trouble with people saying that what you're installing isn't a fixed guideway system, right? I mean, if you're running into jurisdictions saying that you're not building those and trying to apply something other than NFPA 130, which the state we've already adopted, I don't see the need for adding a definition because the only purpose it would serve is to make sure that you use that chapter that says use NFPA 130, and then all the definitions in NFPA 130 would apply.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. However, we are encountering some jurisdictions up north and some in the south here in Western Washington, where what we are building by the code is not necessarily like a light rail transit system. So there is some confusion there and probably some clarity that could be addressed through the tag, and whether or not, an addition, in terms of a definition of what we are, help some of those jurisdictions or building officials or even some of the fire marshals.
Okay. So you're running into trouble, which is why you're experiencing people interpreting something one way or another way, and it's not consistent.
Yeah.
So that's where I would say that makes some sense. Ben?
And for the tags information, the fire tag did adopt that standard for fire protection issues
right
last time. So it is in the 2018 edition of the and 2015 editions of the state amendments for the fire code and for fire. And maybe, I don't know if you necessarily need a definition, but you could adopt it as a standard, certainly.
Yeah. So we're kind of like looking at some of the opportunities that we could explore that would help some of these jurisdictions when we come to them with a light rail system, a high capacity, passenger system that they've never seen before. And it's not contemplated in their code. So if we can come up with some meaningful, beneficial ways of actually helping some of these local jurisdictions, that's really the driving trigger for us, so that as we get through all of the minutia and the granular code sections that we have to be compliant with, we're looking for opportunities for those jurisdictions to be helpful. And, adopting the NFPA 130, like a lot of jurisdictions have done, has actually improved that.
Hey, Terry, it's Ken in Seattle. Why don't we do this, since there's the chapter 40 in the fire code? And then, as you probably know, the city of Seattle has a whole bunch of amendments to 130. So
Yeah.
why don't you and I get together and work on maybe taking some of those amendments on Seattle, and then we could draft up code amendments and put it into the 2021 version of the Washington State Fire Code, which would work for you, I think.
No, that would be great, Ken. I'm very much aware of what Seattle did, and also with Bellevue as well. Did that with Tyler, Travis Ripley, and some of those other folks as well.
But I think that's the tactic, is we just work on chapter 40.
Yeah.
And then wherever, in the building code, it references 130, maybe we'll just have more of a pointer to the Washington State Fire Code.
No, I love that idea. Thanks, Ken.
Okay.
That's all I had about that. Sorry about kind of hijacking the discussion there.
No worries, Terry. Thank you for bringing that up. Any other discussion?
I guess, Mike, I have a question real quick for the sound transit person. I forgot your name. Apologize. I'm just as clarification. Would adding a definition, would it create more like regulation? Don't you have like the advantage of ambiguity right now? Or I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm just kind of thinking about that. But it probably is. It's hard to level with each other in local jurisdictions when you don't have a solid definition, right?
Yeah, well, it's a good question, Damon. I've been in, as Corey knows, I've been in this field of work for almost 36 years now. And what I found out is maybe because, or in lieu of a lack of a definition for something, the code does get kind of loosey-goosey. And sometimes just providing a definition as to what you are and what you're actually building can actually remove some confusion, provide some clarity, and actually provide direction, which is one of the things, primary drivers that we're doing some of these code change proposals here shortly, to actually help those jurisdictions, create a path forward in how they either interpret, as Chris said, or how they go ahead and actually enforce certain sections of the code, such as platform loading out of Chapter 10 means of egress, or any of the other applicable code sections in our stations, notwithstanding some of our elevated guideway or deep underground subterranean stations. So we were kind of thinking, not sure whether or not it would be a good idea or not, but having you folks, kind of provide us some helpful insight on that, as in terms of like providing a definition as to what we are, as established by the state legislature back in 1996, it might help. So your folks' input would be very much appreciated.
Absolutely.
I think ambiguity is not a good thing in the world of construction for the builder or the AHJ. So it ends up, costing time, and time is money for both sides. So
yeah,
absolutely. But sometimes, it could add costs. We might start to require like solar and sprinklers on trains and just other things to kind of keep. I don't know. It just, everyone starts to pick things apart, but it is good. Yeah, it's a good discussion. I appreciate the discussion.
Yeah. Well, just one last point, like most of our stations, especially the above ground stations and the at grade stations, all the jurisdictions so far in Western Washington where we are in this linear project of ours is classified as an A3 occupancy. But it also puts us into some conflict or discrepancies with other local codes such as NFPA 130, which we've been able to, separate some of that and actually get some relief. But there's other, more granular sections of the code that make it difficult for us to actually comply with the local jurisdiction. So we're actually looking for ways that we can actually help us, of course, but also at the same time help the local jurisdiction by having something on the books.
Yeah. And kind of going to the state level can help kind of supersede that process and move through a little
Yeah.
bit,
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Good stuff. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, any other discussion or comments?
Yeah, this is Mark Sniffen. Would you say in general that definitions do not add cost, or could we actually say that? I was trying to think in my mind, it could go for and against you on a project, but in general, should we just say definitions are good and they won't add cost?
Yeah, that's what I would say. I mean, you can't put enforceable you can't put requirements into a definition. So by
That is
putting
true.
a definition or changing it, you're not changing requirements. You're only changing maybe how things are applied and getting rid of ambiguities. So you may, if something was being done incorrectly, by putting a definition in so it can now be applied correctly. If you want to call that adding costs, sure, but I would say that's making the code more readable and precise.
Andrew, I would say yes, asterisk. You can change definitions and change cost. You could change the definition of a story above grade plane, for example, right? And then make more basements a story. But generally, yes, I agree that definitions don't impact cost.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, you're absolutely right. All right, any other comments? All righty, very good.
If we are done with chapter 2, this is all we received. If any of you have worked on other chapters, we just didn't receive the forms. So I'm not sure if other chapters are being evaluated.
Yep. Does anyone have any work that they are finished with that they've not submitted that you want to go over today? All right, that's what I thought, so.
Okay, so let me, I will ask for a favor. I keep asking the same thing, but we have too many chapters for the last meeting next week. And keep in mind that this week, we will have the standing committee, actually 2 standing committees, and we'll have the council meeting. So if for the rest of the chapters, if I know that nobody will work on these chapters, I can work on all or some. So if any of you is planning to work on this chapter, just let me know. If you don't, I can start working today. And we'll go over these chapters and we'll try to send you in advance my recommendations with the same forms, tables we're using. In this case, you folks will be prepared for the last meeting, because next week is the last meeting. We need to end up with a report for the standing committee and for the council.
Stoyan, this is Al Spalding. I was assigned 3 and 4, chapters 3 and 4. I intend to get that to you. I've just been slammed at work, so I apologize, but I will turn that into you guys before the next meeting, well before the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Stoyan, this is Damon. I'll have chapter 5.
Chapter 5. Okay.
I emailed you that as well. So yeah, thank you.
Okay.
This is Mark Snippen. I just wanted to mention that the WABO training is going on next week, their training conference, and so it's going to conflict with the Wednesday's meeting for me.
Well, again, next Wednesday is the last meeting that we need to finish this reports. Again, I'm not worried about working on the chapters. I just didn't want to start and work on something and duplicate with somebody else's work. So I hope we'll have enough TAG members next week to finish the significant changes.
Alrighty, anything else for the good of the order? Stoyan, anything else?
Yes, Krista has on the screen the spreadsheet we worked on for the existing amendments, and I will use this spreadsheet as for the report. Well, it won't be a report format, but I will use this spreadsheet for the standing committee and for the council. But what I wanted to share with you, and chapter 4 is a good example for it. Some of the sections you folks recommended further research or further review, whatever. So I did the research and I did the review, and I have staff recommendation or staff comments in green. So these comments, you don't, in my opinion, you don't need to vote on these comments. This is just the additional research that you requested. So when we get to the reports next week, again for the standing committee and the council, I'll keep these green areas there, but I will clarify that these green areas are not TAG recommendation. These are additional comments based on TAG recommendation. And I want to ask you if this makes sense, or you prefer, not to include the staff recommendations and staff comments. It just, my question is for clarification purposes.
It's clear to me. I think it's a good approach.
So keep the green. This is what I'm getting.
And do you have this posted so that we can review it?
It's not posted, I think, but I can send it to everybody, and I can have it for the next week.
That's perfect.
I didn't post it because I had 2 chapters left, and it wouldn't be a complete a document, but I will finish the other 2 chapters today, and I will have everything there. So I can email you the form, and again, and I will try to post it within, well, by the end of the week. So what I'm getting out of the conversation is I will do the significant changes in for rest of the chapters except chapters 3, 4, and 5. And I will make this form available for everybody, the form that Krista has on the screen. And
Stoyan, do you have the time to be able to do that? Is that doable?
well, I don't know yet, but I'll try.
Okay, give me a call or email me if not, and I'll take some.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, this is all I got.
All righty, anything else? If not, I guess we'll adjourn. Thank you, as always, for your time and participation. And yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry, Andrew. 5 more minutes. I apologize. Thank you, Krista. I forgot. We had, and again, this is something that you don't need to vote on it, but just I'm sharing the information with you. We got a request from the city of Bellevue. And prior of that, we had several discussions with folks from WABO. And the request for opinion came from the city of Bellevue. Basically, the request is related to the deck tables in 2018 International Residential Code. Again, this is a building code tag, but just for information purposes, there are currently 3 tables adopted. One combined table for life load of 60 PSF and a snow load of a ground snow load of 70. So this is a combined table. And listening to the recordings and reading the minutes from the last council meeting that this section was discussed, it appears that only the combined table was intended to be adopted by the council, but there are 2 more tables, one for 60 pounds per square feet life load and the other one for 70. So they're not really conflicting with each other, but it's a little confusing. So again, the city of Bellevue requested the clarification, and this is what I have as an answer, and I'll have it for discussion before the building, fire, and plumbing standing committee. But again, just a heads up for the building contact members.
all right. Thank you, Stodian. And their next BFP meeting is Thursday.
Next Thursday, yes.
Next Thursday, yeah.
Okay, I'm done. I promise I have nothing else.
All righty. So yeah, we're on number 5 then, adjourn. I'll open it up for another 5 seconds if anyone's got anything. And we'll adjourn. Thank you, folks.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.